Nobody warned her about the Oppo when Alina, a 27-year-old Russian woman from St. Petersburg, packed her suitcases and boarded a plane to the Philippines. She thought she was ready for everything the tropics could throw at her. Humidity, mosquitoes, speaking English more than Russian. But she wasn't ready for Oppo, or Ay naku, or Sige na, or wait, kain tayo, even when she didn't ask for food, or the most confusing one of all. I'll go na later. That was the day she realized Filipinos speak English, yes, but they don't speak the same English she learned in textbooks. And she was about to find that out the very first day she landed in Manila. Alina never thought she'd end up living in the Philippines. It all started with what was supposed to be a 3-month work assignment. She worked for a logistics company that was opening a branch in Southeast Asia, and someone thought it was a good idea to send her to the Manila office to iron out the launch. She arrived in the middle of September, rainy season. Stepping out of the airport felt like she had opened an oven. Door that was also a sauna. But she smiled anyway, adjusting her backpack and wheeling her suitcase past the crowds, looking for the driver who was supposed to pick her up. He was holding up a sign that said, "Welcome, Ms. Alina Mom." That was the first confusing thing. Ma'am? In Russia, no one added titles to people that were the same age as them. But this driver, whose name was Joel and who looked no older than 30, was calling her ma'am every time he spoke. "Ma'am Alina, welcome po. Do you want to eat first po or go straight to the company apartment po?" Po? Why was he saying po like a punctuation mark? Po? She repeated, confused. Joel laughed. "Ay, ma'am, sorry po. It's Filipino respect. You'll get used to it, po." That was the beginning. By the time Joel dropped her off at the company condo, Alina had already written her first note on her phone. Thing number 1, Filipinos say that I don't understand po. What is po? Why po? Who po? She also added, "Thing number 2, ma'am. I am not 60 years old. Why, ma'am?" That night, she ordered food delivery because she was too tired to go out and too overwhelmed by what she just experienced. She typed Russian food first. Nothing. European food. Nothing. She settled on Filipino food, but nothing could prepare her for her first delivery rider message. "Hi, ma'am, order is on the way po. Kindly stand by lang po. Kindly stand by lang po." She stared at the message. In Russia, delivery people would say, "Arriving in 5 minutes." Here, it sounded like she was being instructed by a flight attendant. "Kindly stand by lang po." 10 minutes later, the food arrived. It was chicken adobo. And rice, lots of rice. The small meal she ordered came with a mountain of rice bigger than her face. The rider smiled like he knew a secret she didn't. "Thank you, po, ma'am." "Enjoy po." There it was again. Po. She just nodded and said, "Spasibo po," before closing the door. And yes, she said po. That was the moment she knew her vocabulary was already changing. The next morning, she met the Filipino staff at the Manila office. That's when the strange sentences really began. People kept telling her, "Sige na, wait lang, later na, I'll do it now, later." She felt like she had entered a quantum language, where time meant nothing and everything was both later and now, depending on the sentence. But the biggest moment of all happened 3 days later, during her first lunch break. She was sitting alone in the pantry, eating a simple sandwich she brought from home. That's when someone tapped her shoulder, a woman named Ella from accounting, who had the brightest smile Alina had ever seen. "Ma'am Alina." "Kain tayo." Alina froze. She didn't know what kain tayo meant. She tried smiling back. "Oh, do I need to sign something?" Ella laughed so hard she almost choked on her own food. No, ma'am. Kain tayo means, let's eat." She pointed at her lunch. Chicken, pancit, lumpia, and rice, lots of rice, always rice. "It's okay po, we can share." "Sama ka para we can talk." Alina looked down at her sandwich. Suddenly, it felt like a sad little rectangle of food shame. She slowly closed it back into the container, stood up, and said, "Oh, po?" Ella screamed with joy. "Ay! Marunong ka na." That was the day Alina learned what kain tayo really meant. It wasn't just an invitation to eat. It meant, come, you're one of us. That night, Alina wrote her third note. Thing number 3, kain tayo means I am now part of the food. And the family. And maybe, I'm not going home in 3 months. She meant it as a joke. She didn't know yet that it was prophecy because the next things Filipinos said would change everything, like bahala na and for a while. And I'll go ahead. But the one that broke her, the one that almost made her cry in public, was when she heard her landlady say, "Don't worry, Alina, you're family now." She didn't understand why she felt emotional, maybe because no Russian stranger had ever said that to her. Maybe because she didn't know that words could be this warm. Maybe because somehow the Philippines was starting to feel like a place she had always known, even before she ever arrived. She didn't understand the words at first, but she felt the meaning, and that was how it began. Alina never intended to mix Russian bluntness with Filipino sweetness, but after just a few weeks of living in Manila, something strange began to happen. She started saying "opo" to her Russian friends on video calls. That was only the beginning. One night, she was scrolling through messages from her best friend Anya back in Moscow. Anya was trying to plan a meetup and had asked if Alina was coming home in December. Alina typed almost without thinking, "Bahala na." She stared at the words. She deleted them. Typed again. "Let's see na lang." She froze. What did I just type? She looked around her rented apartment, like as if someone was watching. She didn't know whether to laugh or panic. She, Alina Sokolov, proud Russian woman, had just used Tagalog to explain her plans like some kind of tropical snowbird who loved jeepneys more than trams. It was getting worse, or better. She wasn't sure. Earlier that day, she had caught herself saying, "Ay naku!" when she dropped a spoon. She used "suzmeriosep" when the tricycle driver suddenly swerved into traffic. She had started eating rice, not just with meals, but as the meal. She used a tiny fan as her closest friend. And the weirdest part? It all felt natural. She didn't even notice the changes anymore until she heard her own voice echo in foreign contexts, like inside her Russian head, where she knew those words should not belong. But it wasn't until the day she entered a Filipino household, truly entered one, that she finally understood what was happening. It was an invitation from Mira, the first Filipino friend she'd made online before traveling. "Come to my Lola's birthday this Sunday," she had said over Messenger. "You'll love it." Alina had been warned about Filipino family gatherings. The food, the noise, the aunts asking about marriage, the karaoke. She expected chaos. She expected culture shock. She didn't expect to feel home. The moment she entered the house, something invisible wrapped around her, like warmth with a heartbeat. There was Mira's mother, hugging her as if they'd known each other for years. There were kids running barefoot, squealing over balloons. There was a table so full of food it should have collapsed. Pancit, lumpia, barbecue, leche flan, pancit bihon na may calamansi, and a gigantic platter of rice everyone just kept refilling. Someone put a plate in her hand. Someone else put food on the plate before she could answer. Someone shoved a glass of gulaman into her palm. "Eat more," they kept saying as if she had already eaten it all. "Thank you," she muttered shyly. "Thank you, Po," one aunt whispered behind her, correcting her with a grin. "Po. Always Po." Filipinos used it as seasoning, for respect, for affection, for rhythm. And now she was sprinkling it in her own speech without realizing. Alina was eating beside the titas when it happened. A man walked into the house carrying a giant pot. Everyone cheered. "Lashon Kawali is here," someone yelled. Instinctively, Alina shouted, "Ay, salamat!" She froze. She slapped her hand over her mouth. The room fell silent for a microsecond. Then Mira burst out laughing. "You're a real Filipino now," she teased. They all laughed, lovingly, and something opened inside Alina. Not a door, not a window, but maybe a soul-sized hammock where cultures could sit together and talk about life. Later that night, when the karaoke machine came out and someone forced a microphone into her hand, she sang Dancing Queen with a Russian accent, surrounded by cheering strangers who called her Anak. Nobody had ever called her that before. She went home with pancit, leftover barbecue, and a new bruise in her heart, the kind that comes from too much unexpected love. The next morning, during a video call, Anya told her, "You sound different." "How?" Alina asked. "You sound softer," Anya replied. "And you said yes, Po, when I asked if you could hear me." Alina blinked. She didn't correct her. She closed her eyes and let the truth wash over her. She wasn't just learning how Filipinos spoke. She was learning how they lived, how they laughed when things went wrong, how they shared when they barely had enough. how they listened with their chest, not just their ears. How they believed in bahala na, not as surrender, but as trust. Trust in life. Trust in God, trust in tomorrow, and even trust in strangers, in case they turn into family. One afternoon, she was in a jeepney when a student beside her was panicking because he was late for class. Stuck in traffic, Alina turned to him and said, "Bahala na." Then, instinctively, she added, "Basta laban lang." The student smiled. He didn't know she was Russian. She didn't tell him, because right there, in that sticky, crowded, rattling jeepney, she realized something. She wasn't pretending anymore. She wasn't studying a culture. She wasn't copying expressions just to make videos. She was living a life she didn't even know she'd been searching for. One day, while vlogging in Divisoria, she caught herself ending her sentence with "Diba?" She froze. Then she laughed. "Oh no," she said to the camera, cheeks flushed. "I think I'm becoming Filipino." And for the first time in her life, changing didn't scare her. It felt like belonging. Alina thought leaving the Philippines would be like ending a good vacation. It wasn't. It felt more like leaving someone she loved, without knowing when she'd see them again. She told her friends in Russia that she needed time to process the trip. But the truth was, it still felt like she had left half her heart in a jeepney somewhere in Quezon City. Her first week back in Moscow was supposed to feel familiar, grounding, real. But it didn't. The silence tasted strange, the cold bit deeper. The metro trains moved fast and efficiently, but people didn't look each other in the eye anymore. Nobody said good morning po or ingat ha. Nobody insisted she take food she didn't ask for. Nobody laughed out loud anymore. She opened her fridge. No rice. She turned on YouTube. No tricycles. No laughter from kids in the street. No slow afternoon rain on metal roofs. She tried recording a video for her channel, the usual Russian vlog topics, Moscow markets, recipes in her kitchen, daily routines. It felt empty, like someone had turned off the background music of her life. Worse. The comments weren't the same anymore. "Where's the Filipino version of you? Can you talk about the Philippines again? Miss Kona accent mo, why don't you say Oppo anymore?" She stared at the screen, heart sinking. She felt exposed, like they knew something she hadn't even admitted to herself. She had tried to speak Russian only in her first video back home, thinking it would recenter her. But when she finished filming and hit playback, every sentence sounded dry, like the words were frozen somewhere before they reached her lips. She sighed. She put down the camera. She reached for her phone. Without thinking, she dialed a number in the Philippines. "Hello?" Mira answered, her voice bright with sleep. "It's me," Alina said softly. There was a pause, then a smile she could hear. "You sound sad," Mira said. "I don't think I came home," Alina whispered. "I just changed places." As she spoke, she felt her eyes fill, not with grief, but with longing. A longing that wasn't just for warm weather or sweet spaghetti or endless rice, but for the life she'd begun building inside herself. She walked outside into the cold, snow beginning to fall gently. She caught flakes in her palm and stared at them like they were foreign. When she had left Russia months ago, Moscow was everything she knew. Now it felt like a beautiful painting she wasn't part of anymore. She met her mother for dinner later that week, a quiet, predictably elegant meal in a warm apartment. Her mother looked at her across the table. "You're different," she said softly. "Not just more tan," Alina laughed, but it wasn't the same laugh. It didn't fill the air the way it used to. "What happened to you, Dochinka?" her mother asked. "I fell in love," she said simply. "With someone?" her mother asked. "With a country." Her mother didn't speak, but her face softened. "You're allowed to leave," she finally said. Home is not a prison. That night, Alina went to her room, opened her laptop, and watched one of her last vlogs in the Philippines, the one where she tasted turon for the first time and whispered, "Ay, ang sarap." She watched her face on screen, eyes lit, shoulders relaxed, words half Tagalog, half English. "Ate, may pahabol ka pa?" She paused the video. She stared at the woman on the screen. That was her. That was her. When she clicked Create New Video, she didn't write a title for a Moscow vlog. She titled it, "I think I was wrong about where I belong." And she began speaking, and from the heart, for the first time in a long, long time. I went to the Philippines to make a documentary about culture, but the culture made a documentary out of me. I went to study tiny things, words, habits, jokes, but they turned into the biggest parts of my life. I used to think I was only visiting, but now I think maybe I was coming home. The video went viral, not for its camera work, not for its location, but because of the quiet tremble in her voice when she said one Tagalog word at the end. Salamat. It was the most honest thing she had ever said on the internet. Within days, she had thousands of comments, and from Filipinos, from Russians who had never heard of the Philippines, from strangers who finally understood a simple truth. Sometimes home isn't the place where you're from, it's the place where someone hands you a plate of food before you've even said you're hungry, where someone says ingat like it's a hug, where rain doesn't feel lonely, and laughter climbs out of windows into the street. Alina bought a one-way ticket the next week. She returned to the Philippines, not as a tourist, not as a vlogger searching for content, but as a woman coming back to the version of herself that felt most alive. The first thing she did when she landed wasn't to vlog or post or record. She walked up to the friendly immigration officer and said, with a full smile and a full heart, "Magandang araw po." The officer paused, then he grinned. "Welcome home." And this time, she knew it was true.